You talk about supply, but there's the other side too, which is demand. I want to ask you about two prickly questions about the demand for housing. One is foreign buyers who are just looking for a safe place to put their money, whether they're, I think it used to be Russia, a lot of people in China. They want to get their money out of their country lest their own government seize it. There's a lot of property in Vancouver being bought by foreign buyers, probably Toronto too. And I don't think that's as big as the second factor, which is immigration. If you have 400,000 people a year coming to Canada, which is higher than almost any other country in the G20, and half of them are going to Toronto or Vancouver, there's no way you're going to keep up. You just adding that many people to the biggest cities, it's going to jam them up, and it's going to, if it doesn't push down wages, it'll certainly push up housing. Do you have anything to say about immigration levels, or is that something that is off the political table?
I think that Canada's multiculturalism and pluralism is a beautiful thing. I'm an immigrant to Canada. I came here when I was 15, and I've had every blessing our country had to offer. And my family and myself were able to contribute positively to our country, and I still hope to continue to do that. I think that Canadian values are not just welcoming, but why do immigrants come to Canada? They come here for democracy and economic opportunity. Those are conservative values. And I think that it's important for the Conservative Party to dispel any history of being anti-immigration and embrace lawful, legal immigration. At the same time, I think it's a necessary thing for Canada because we have an aging demographic and we have a shrinking labor force. One of the greatest challenges that we're experiencing today is the size of the labor force. Thankfully, everyone's hiring. And that is because a lot of folks left or retired from the labor force. So we need to encourage more entry into the market, and skilled labor, immigrants, young people is something that we need to be looking at. It's the only way we can catch up with demand in the labor market.
I hear what you're saying about the quality of immigration. You're talking about multicultural and welcoming, and I accept that, by the way. But there's also the quantitative side. I mean, over the past few years, Justin Trudeau has set a number, and it feels arbitrary. And every Conservative leader, Aaron O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, says, okay, I agree with that number, instead of coming up with our own number. And the number is very high, and it's growing, and it's higher than our competitors. And the only reason I raise it is that, when you add 400,000 people a year to the country, and they mainly go to Vancouver and Toronto, I don't know if you're going to, you can try and fix supply all you like, but there's a demand issue too, and it's a traffic issue, and it's a hospitals issue. So do we have to always say yes to Trudeau's number? How do we come up with the number ourselves? And I'm not saying change the ethnic mix. I'm just saying, is there a number that's too high? If Trudeau said 500,000 a year, if Trudeau said 1 million a year, do we always have to say yes to Trudeau?
But Ezra, it's the shortage of the labor force that also creates inflation. A couple of days ago, I went into one of my favorite restaurants, Bagel Plus, at Shepherd and Bathurst for an afternoon lunch. And at 2 o'clock, they told me they're closing down because they don't have labor. And what that means is, in order to attract more people to work, because there's a shortage of labor, businesses have to increase their prices. Shortage of labor is now causing massive inflation all over Canada. So instead of thinking just on the demand side, we should be thinking on the supply side of housing. We keep finding ways not to build in our country. We know that municipal issues, provincial governments, generally left of center governments always get in the way of development. And I think we don't have an immigration issue. We have a political and ideological issue whereby we are precluded from allowing supply to catch up with demand. But I'd like to stress again, I speak to a lot of small business owners who tell me that their greatest challenge right now is staffing. And this is not just bad for our economy, it's very bad for our cost of living. And so I'm of the view that we need to encourage lawful immigration, but that supply of housing needs to start catching up with demand.
That was an excerpt from my daily TV-style show called The Ezra Levant Show. Each weekday, I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview a fascinating guest. I read some fan mail or hate mail, depends on which I like more, and we end with a video of the day. You can get it all at rebelnewsplus.com.